Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us here on NTV Weekend Edition. On Talk of the Nation tonight, we do realize that it has been a week since the schools received learners for the face-to-face education. But we want to pick the thoughts of Philbert Bagoma, who is the Secretary General of the Uganda National Teachers Union, on how the week has been going so far. What are the challenges that we're seeing, and moving ahead, how do we address them? A very good evening, and thank you once again for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, 1 week face-to-face learning, how is it going? How would you say we are doing?
Yes, of course we received this week with excitement, with fears, and a coordinated kind of communication. It was long awaited to have these schools reopen, and when they finally reopened, we saw a number of things happening. One, the low turn-up of the learners. Especially in the rural setup, we are seeing learners, some districts are as low as 30%, 40, 50, but there are those which are doing well. You saw some districts coming up with interventions to see how to mobilize the learners to get back to school. Good enough, we had the fear that teachers would not turn up, but the turn up of the teachers in most areas, averagely, it is above 90%, which means the teachers are available and the learners should be mobilized to come and study. We saw some local governments failing to release money to prepare the schools. They were supposed to have funds for renovation of the schools, funds for standard operating procedures, and then capitation grants. Up to now, as we talk, we are finishing the first week. Some local governments have not released this money, which is unfortunate, because it is like you are giving the head teacher food, and you are saying, don't cook it, don't roast it, but I want it ready. Now the head teacher is helpless. They move up and down trying to make ends meet, but sometimes, obviously, they have to fail because issues are not okay. We have seen schools failing to reopen. Some of these schools, some opened, waited for learners, they didn't see them, they made decisions to close. The latest being one school in Ntinda here, where the parents had even paid and they are advised to go to other schools, which is unfortunate. We have seen those which completely failed to reopen. And therefore there is an influx in some of the schools, some of the government schools, and they are running out of space, and the parents are stranded with these learners. We saw the Ministry of Education and Sports through the National Curriculum Development Center coming up with an abridged curriculum. And it was coming at a time when the schools were reopening. This week, they tried to have virtual trainings of the teachers, both in primary and secondary. But of course, this should have been done earlier than this week to get the teachers prepared. But of course, the teachers will try to cope up, although some time has been wasted and will be wasted when the teachers are trying to internalize the abridged curriculum, what has been maintained and what has been thrown out.
Well, speaking about this curriculum, do you think it is the best solution to students, to young ones that have been out of the education setup for 2 years? Do you think it's going to bridge that gap?
Of course, whatever we are doing, we are making initiatives to manage the situation, the new abnormal we are dealing with. So we cannot ascertain and say this is the best idea, but minds are being put together to see how best can we move in the direction so that we save the learners. Of course, missing school for 2 years is such a long time.
True.
And you see the learners not coming, some parents are still skeptical. In the previous year, when the reopening was phased, some parents would pay, and hardly a week, they closed the schools. And there was no refund of school fees. So some are weighing in to see, is it going to be the same scenario? Those are there. There are those who are fighting with the heart. Should I go back to school, or I should remain doing what I have been doing? So we need to have intensified campaigns to make sure that these learners are mobilized and brought back to the schools.
Actually, you do remind me, we did receive a report recently where some learners were asking the institutions to allow them some bit of time to carry on with their businesses. And just to pick your thoughts, do you think this is likely to affect their concentration in the schools? How do we navigate that?
Obviously, the concentration will not be onset. We need to manage this longevity out of school. And how do we manage it? We have to consistently and constantly guide and counsel these learners. They still have that fight within themselves. I have been making my money. Now I have come back to school. What happens to the money I was earning? Those I have left there, they are continuing to earn. For me, I have gone back to school. Am I going to catch them at any one time? So we need to tell them that yes, that can be short-lived. You are better off concentrating on your studies and then go to work at the right time.
Well, also some school heads have presented a challenge where they say that they're struggling to observe the SOPs. Is that something that you feel you've interacted with? And moving ahead, how do we work around it? I mean, it's something that really needs to be paid attention to.
Obviously, part of the standard operating procedures are difficult to implement. A case in point is social distancing. The infrastructure has remained the same. Yeah. But we are now talking of social distance. So how do you social distance the learners to fit within the structures that were existing at the time of closure, and yet the time of closure you had overcrowded classrooms? What happens when you have other learners coming to the school, and yet by government policy you are not supposed to send away a learner who has come to access education, especially under UPE and USE? So how do you manage this scenario? The Ministry of Education and Sports had indicated that they would have provision of tents for temporary classrooms. I am yet to see them, but we need now to rescue the heads of institutions who are faced with the challenge of overcrowding, because we need to save the lives of the learners, the teachers, and those who work in the school communities.
Another issue that we have seen in the most recent days, last week, is the issue of teenage pregnancy and the guidelines that have been put in place to sort of regulate or bring to peace the entire situation. We are seeing that the girls have to take leave 3 months once they're 3 months pregnant, and also the boys that are responsible for the pregnancy have to get out of school. What are your thoughts on the guidelines? And for example, if this young boy has impregnated 4 girls, what happens to that? And do you think these guidelines are going to do away with the stigmatization that we are likely to see with teenage mothers at school, and the issue of it looking like it's okay to the other young girls, that it's fine to get pregnant and actually carry on with education?
You see, when we talk about this, it is something that has run out of hand during this lockdown and school closures. And you can only understand it when it comes to you. If you are at home, you send your child to go and fetch water or to go to the shop. The child is defiled along the way. The child is impregnated, and now they are telling you your child should not come to school because she's going to act as a bad example. Now, we are only looking at one side, but it can also act as an example to the girls to know that, right, I should not engage in this because this experience is not the best.
Sure.
So it is two-way. And for the boys, you may actually even not know who impregnated this girl.
True.
And therefore, ascertaining that this is the boy who impregnated the girl may be difficult. But like I told you, we are dealing with a new abnormal. We need to continuously engage and discuss some of these things, because a school has so many people, innocent and the bad ones. But similarly, we have the churches. Do you know any church where they have stood at the entrance and said, you are a prostitute, don't enter the church? And therefore, let us discuss some of these things objectively to look at the future of the girls. When you look at the statistics from these local governments, 10,000, 8,000, 7,000, where are these girls going to end? And what will be the effects on the government, on the economy, on the production? At the end of the day, even the churches and mosques and what will be affected, because these learners will be in the community but will not contribute much.
Well, thank you so much for your thoughts, and you do leave us with a number of things that we should reflect on, and I hope moving ahead we shall find solutions to those and more. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with more.